So my pile of browns are starting to mount up. You can see that I've had the sifted soil right beneath the chicken wire on the right to the right of the buckets. There's the about 2 or 3 barrels, wheelbarrows of sifted soil, and then about a half a can of leaves. They're on ground, but they're available. I'll use them, but I'll use them only in a light dusting methodology. They will break down, but if you put them down too thick, maybe even as much as a half an inch, then they have a tendency to rubberize themselves. They mat up and they don't break down, so hence the idea of chipping your leaves. However, until I can experiment with the Still, S-T-Y-L-L, is that how you spell it? The Still brand of leaf gatherer. I understand it gathers up the leaves and chips them really well. I had an old Sears model that was supposed to do that, but it did a lousy job. It tainted my idea of leaf suckers that chip and bag at the same time. But the Still makes a great product. I use all of theirs. They last. It's the way to go. I don't receive any financial compensation for these name brands I'm throwing out to you. I'm just throwing them out to you because I plan on trying to make it as easy as possible. So right now we're looking at the chicken wire, and what I've done is extended my, put in my first metal stake, concrete reinforcement wire, I think is what it's called, a rebar perhaps. Has spirals on it, which kind of holds the chicken wire. I lay the chicken wire down this way because it's a lot easier to get your metal stakes in perpendicular to the wire. When you put the wire up first and then try to insert the stakes, it's a lot harder. This is a lot easier, moves fairly quickly. And so here at the bottom end, what I've done is moved my 4-foot stake to the last stake. You'll see there's 5 stakes, only 4 corners, but the reason I use that 5th stake is somewhere out of the, in a workable area, I make a gate, and it's easier to open up that gate and harvest your finished product. And even in some cases, I'm rather tall, so it's easy for me to pick things up and drop it over a 4-foot tall wire. But maybe if you don't have that height advantage or shoulder power, then maybe you want to build your pile through the gate, and you can do that fairly easy, especially the tamping down process that I'll show you a little bit later on. Anyway, you can see where I've got my, I've started cutting with my wire shears. That's a really simple, fast process, and started weaving in the metal stake, so about every 4 or 5 holes I just weave it in and out, and I'll show you how that goes. Sounds like our afternoon rain is coming on us, so hopefully things will start moving here quickly. So, you know, it's relatively easy clipping that, and the metal stake just is a simple weaving process, easy enough to follow the holes, so you end up with a stake that's parallel to the ground instead of at an angle. Looks better ultimately when you're doing something out in the front yard or even in the backyard. You want good aesthetic appearances, and it looks like you put a little energy into it, and I think the rewards come to you because you created a thing of beauty. Obviously, if you were in a farm, you'd be creating what's called a windrow. A lot of backyard gardeners like to do these incredible boxes, sometimes out of wooden pallets. The problem with the wooden pallets is the wooden pallets have a tendency to allow food items to slip between the outside and the inside, or the top and bottom of the pallet, and then that becomes an invitation to rodents. When you build a pile this way, you don't have any problems with raccoons, possums, mice, anything. There's a clear indicator if you had a problem just by the methodology of the build, but once you build this pile, you'll see that you don't have a varmint problem whatsoever. So obviously you don't have the place to build a windrow. Windrows could be, I suppose you could call it a windrow, but normally in a farm you would see a windrow maybe 50, 100 feet long, perhaps 8-10 feet tall, and you know, proportionate width in order to get that kind of pyramid, somewhat pyramid design, where skinnier at the top and wider at the bottom. And of course there's stories of huge amounts of windrows being created because of excess materials. Obviously there's a positive, a point of the smaller the compost pile, not so good, and the larger the compost pile, not so good. So what you're looking for is at least a cubic yard, 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot, built right away in order to get the heat process up. So the idea of building a little bit at a time really doesn't work for true compost. It's awful easy for it to go into the anaerobic instead of aerobic, and you end up with stinky, slimy stuff instead of sweet smelling materials. And that stinky, slimy stuff has teens, like turpentines. It's some sort of an actual detriment to plant growth. So whenever you have a part that goes bad, you can bury it away from the plant, but you can't bury it with the plant. Or in some cases I've taken it and recomposted. Now the piles that they build 20 foot tall to compost, they've actually had stories about the fire department coming to a pile that's got so much heat built up that it self-ignited itself and it's burning from the inside. So there was a story about they felt as though if they could just cover the hole that had collapsed within, and that they would put the fire out. So they ran a tractor up on top of this this compost pile that was burning out of control. And what they didn't realize is that the whole center core of the pile had burnt. It didn't look that way from the outside. It looked like only one place was burning. They ran the tractor up, and the tractor collapsed inside the pile of burning hot stuff. So you'll not get to an explosive material if you're building 3 foot piles. Never happened to me, and I'm working in the subtropics or tropics and the heat buildup is usually a lot higher, although the weather reports would indicate we got heat explosions everywhere across the United States. Anyway, never a problem in Florida. I've never had a pile ignite. I've certainly had piles where you didn't leave your hand in it very long because it was that hot. A good pile that's cooking will heat up a shovel in a shovel head in a quick period of time, and you won't be able to hold on to that shovel head. That's how you know you've got a good compost pile going. But as far as self-igniting, never happened. It's usually on the 10-20 foot tall piles where you get those kind of issues. So I'll continue on with the build and get back to you at the next stage.